All right, let's get right into it. I am absolutely thrilled to share this explainer with you today, mainly because we're looking at something that affects every single one of us the literal second we unlock our phones. We're going to unpack exactly how our screens are fundamentally warping the realities of armed conflict. I mean, we have this incredible, unprecedented access to information right in our pockets, but we really have to stop and ask ourselves a very serious question about what exactly we are consuming. So, think about the last time you saw combat footage scrolling through your feed. It probably felt completely raw, right? Unfiltered. Like you were getting this direct, immediate window into the absolute truth. Well, today, we're peeling back the curtain on that exact assumption. We're going to challenge the idea that what you're seeing is the whole truth and really explore how the very platforms we use to stay informed might actually be distorting the reality of the battlefield. Okay, let's dive into this. We're starting with the new digital frontline and the evolution of war reporting. After that, we'll break down the actual content of conflict, uncover the invisible algorithms and human psychology at play, examine the intense distortions of war, and finally wrap up with how to actually navigate this chaotic information battlefield. Section 1. The new digital frontline. The collision of combat and culture. You know, for the longest time, if you wanted to know about a war, you completely relied on traditional gatekeepers. We're talking state-controlled media, established journalists, official military press briefings. They basically held the keys to the sole narrative. But today, those gatekeepers have entirely lost their monopoly. The digital frontline now acts as this wildly complex interface where raw, brutal conflict basically collides head-on with the highly curated, performative nature of online culture. What's absolutely crucial to take away here is that our engagement with this content isn't passive anymore. It's this active, multi-layered process of interpretation that has entirely reshaped military affairs. We aren't just an audience watching from the sidelines, we're active participants in shaping the narrative. Section 2. Evolution of war reporting. From epics to algorithms. Let's move to and see how this builds historically, because controlling the narrative of war is an ancient practice. For millennia, leaders commissioned epic poems, like Homer's Iliad, which, if you think about it, was essentially some of the world's very first state-sponsored propaganda designed to legitimize power. Fast forward to the 19th century, and the printing press, alongside Crimean war correspondents, brought these visceral, written dispatches to the public. Then, the 20th century hits, and the Vietnam War famously drags the grim reality of combat straight into people's living rooms on TV, completely upending official narratives. And now, welcome to the 21st century and the decentralized mobile internet. The desire to represent war is as old as civilization itself, for sure. But the near instantaneous speed and massive scale of today's internet, that is completely unprecedented. And this brings us to a massive double-edged sword, the democratization of war reporting. On one hand, it's honestly incredible. Literally anyone on the ground with a smartphone can share their perspective, giving us transparency we've never seen before. But on the flip side, entirely bypassing professional fact-checkers and traditional gatekeepers creates a super volatile environment. It's incredibly ripe for distortion. It's the kind of environment where a compelling piece of fiction can travel the globe twice before the actual truth even gets its boots on. Section 3. The contents of conflict. Visuals, texts, and simulations. And this brilliantly illustrates the visual extremes we are constantly exposed to now. Take a look at the contrast. Drone footage gives us this highly detached, almost godlike view of the battlefield. It looks so objective, emphasizing grand strategy and troop movements, but it very conveniently omits the massive human suffering and civilian impact happening right down there on the ground. Then you have first-person combat footage. It feels undeniably visceral and real, but it completely lacks any broader situational context. Actually, fun fact, it is shockingly common for older tactical video game footage to just be passed off as raw combat video online and garner millions of views. It's crazy. Both of these angles claim to show the reality of war, yet both inherently distort the whole truth. But the scope of this goes way beyond just what the camera lens captures. We're seeing this chaotic, swirling mix of content. We've got civilian mobile phone testimonies capturing the devastating human cost, right alongside unfiltered soldier blogs giving us a peek into daily military life. But mixed right in with those totally genuine accounts are these highly curated, emotionally charged propaganda montages explicitly meant to evoke your anger or your sympathy. Throw in incredibly realistic military video games and immersive AR/VR training applications, and suddenly, the digital frontline blurs the lines between raw reality, curated propaganda, and simulated entertainment until they're basically indistinguishable. Section 4. Algorithms and Human Psychology, the Invisible Machinery. Okay, let's start peeling back the layers with a foundational concept from media effects theories, the uses and gratifications theory. Now, to translate that academic jargon into plain English, I want to ask you directly, why do you click on intense or graphic conflict videos? Like, really think about it. Is it purely just to seek information, or is there maybe a morbid voyeuristic impulse at play? Perhaps it's a way to find social validation within your specific peer group. We actively choose our media to satisfy these underlying psychological drivers, and that heavily fuels our confirmation bias, making us actively hunt for footage that simply confirms what we already believe about a given conflict. Building right on top of that is the social construction of reality. This theory basically states that our understanding of the world isn't just derived from cold, objective facts, but is actively built together through our social interactions. Online communities use inside jokes, shared memes, and viral hashtags to literally construct an entire digital reality of a war. Driven by our deep, totally human psychological need for belonging and collective identity, these online echo chambers often build a narrative that diverges wildly from the actual, highly complex truth on the ground. So the crucial point is how this plays out in real time through the culture of virality. It happens in 4 incredibly rapid, almost dangerous steps. Step 1, an emotionally charged event happens. Step 2, social media algorithms, which, remember, are designed purely to maximize the time you spend staring at your screen, detect rapid engagement. And that engagement is almost always fueled by anger or fear. Step 3, the algorithm heavily amplifies this content, feeding it straight into perfectly insulated echo chambers. And finally, Step 4, for the content to be shared on a massive scale, all geopolitical complexity and nuance are intentionally stripped away. A deeply complex reality is eroded down into a simplistic, highly shareable soundbite. Section 5. The Distortions of War, Funhouse Mirrors. The digital frontline essentially acts like a giant set of funhouse mirrors, constantly stretching, bending, and just completely warping the reality of the battlefield. One of the most fascinating concepts to come out of the research here is from philosopher Jean Baudrillard. It's called hyperrealism. This is what happens when the digital representation of war becomes so incredibly pervasive, it actually supersedes the real thing. It essentially sanitizes the violence. Think about those slick highlight reels of military operations set to triumphant thumping music, or that video game logic we talked about earlier. They present combat as this clean, exciting, heroic spectacle. But by doing that, they completely erase the prolonged suffering, the grueling ethical dilemmas, and the intense trauma of actual messy combat. The shiny simulation completely masks the grim reality. And hyperrealism is really just one single tool in what we can call the arsenal of distortion. These tactics shape literally everything you see online. You've got echo chambers that trap us in an endless loop of confirmation bias. You have incredibly convincing AI deepfakes and totally fabricated news articles. Then there's selective framing, which is taking a technically true fact, but entirely stripping it of context so its meaning completely changes. We also constantly face sensationalism that deliberately bypasses your rational brain to just trigger pure emotion. And finally, the sheer information overload, where the massive volume of content just exhausts us into passively accepting whatever scrolls by. And to be totally clear, the research stresses that these tactics are weaponized impartially by everyone: state actors, extremist groups, and even just ordinary users desperate for engagement. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is perhaps the most invisible threat of all: computational propaganda. This is the highly strategic use of automated bot accounts and algorithms. You would probably be shocked to learn exactly how many trending arguments online are entirely bot-driven. They exist to manufacture a totally fake consensus, or honestly, just to sow deliberate chaos and confusion on your timeline. It makes it incredibly difficult to discern genuine human accounts from manufactured ones, effectively manipulating public discourse without anyone even realizing the strings are being pulled. Section 6. Navigating the Information Battlefield, Reclaiming Reality. So how do we actually fight back on this information battlefield? If there is one core thesis you take away from this entire explainer, please let it be this: the digital frontline is not a passive reflection of war. It is an active participant in shaping it. As focused learners,
Simply recognizing this is your absolute greatest defense. You have to consciously counter your own cognitive dissonance. You've got to actively break yourself out of those algorithmic echo chambers by purposely seeking out diverse, well-sourced perspectives. Real digital literacy isn't just about spotting a fake video. It's about deeply understanding how your own psychological drivers are being leveraged against you.
Which leaves us right here. The algorithms certainly aren't going anywhere, and the sheer overwhelming volume of content is only going to keep increasing. So, the very next time the raw reality of conflict suddenly pops up on your screen, what are you going to do? Will you let the funhouse mirrors completely dictate your reality and just blindly scroll to the next post? Or will you pause, break that cycle of virality, and critically question exactly what was left outside the frame? The power to reclaim reality is literally right there in your hands. Thank you so much for diving into this intensely complex topic with me today. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.